Like being in a room with a lot of people and wanting them all to like you, that's a form of control. Uh, you're trying to control the outcome of everything so you can feel safe. Okay, welcome back. As always, we'll get right into it. So here's a fun one. Detrimental characteristics of the 4F defenses. 4F meaning fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Here are some lesser known, some of these are easy to see and some of them are lesser known and maybe surprising. Detrimental characteristics of fight defense. These defenses they come about as coping mechanisms when we weren't in a completely safe, physically or emotionally or whatever, safe to be yourself, safe to tell the truth in everything and show your emotions. Normally a parent would allow that and allow you to progress through these things, these stages of development. Some of our parents, either through them being dysregulated and getting upset by certain things that we did, or by them thinking, I'm going to raise them as the grown-up that I want them to be. When you're still just a little kid, you're not supposed to try to control how they feel and keep them happy. That's not a kid's job, you know? When you're a little toddler, you're just supposed to toddle around. So, as a coping mechanism for not being authentic, for not being allowed to be authentic, or to feel safe and grow, you know? That's the whole point of childhood, is growing. So, at least for me, and from what I take from other people, we all have each one of these 4 types. You may think, oh, I'm a fight response. I'm a fight. I'm a fighter. Or I freeze, I shy away. There are these different versions where you do butt back in a way, even if you're raging against something in your mind. You're sitting there fighting, at least struggling against in your mind. You know, you're thinking against something, even though it's not coming out through fists or words, you know. So just bear with me and kind of be lenient and give me a little wiggle room so I can help you to see that you probably have each of these types inside of you. I know I sure do. I overthink about things constantly, and as I'm reading these, my mind's reeling off of each different thing that they're mentioning, and I'm like, oh yeah, well that might be this, and that, you know, I'm making all these connections. So let's jump right in. Detrimental characteristics of the fight defense. Narcissistic, that can be fighty because you're asserting for yourself over others. Controlling, and it's parentheses, enslaving, but controlling and trying to make others, that's a fear response to need to control. You wouldn't need to control if you weren't worried about stuff past a fitting amount of normal control in your life. But when it's maladaptive and where you get upset without control, or things that don't require you to feel control, like being in a room with a lot of people and wanting them all to like you, that's a form of control. You're trying to control the outcome of everything so you can feel safe and you feel you're not dysregulated when you control everything around you. I had that specific example. I like things to be in their place, and that's my version of control. I always felt like it was because of my bad memory and I didn't want to lose things. No, it irks me to see things out of place. Sometimes I purposely put something diagonal a little bit so it'll stand out to me and remind me to do something, you know. But it's all stemming from childhood fear and the need to control everything around me. It's really, you know, not that great. Not a very well adaptive strategy. You're just gonna slowly die in your deathbed just trying to get, and then as you finally let go, you'll see a moment of peace before you drift on, you know. Sorry for that imagery. Controlling. Entitlement, type A behavior. Bullying, of course. Autocrat, like I'm the ruler, what I say goes. Demands perfection. Yeah, that's controlling others, demanding perfection. Or even wanting perfection out of everything you do. When you beat yourself up over that certain thing, you're like fighting against your own self and a human nature to make mistakes. And again, it's to a maladaptive degree. Of course, a normal rational amount is fine to want something to be good enough. But when you're going overboard and you're dysregulated without having perfect, it's maladaptive. It's poorly adapting. Sociopath. All right, so let's see. Let's get into the flight. Detrimental characteristics of the fight defense. Obsessive compulsive. Okay. Panicky. Rushing or worrying, trying to outrun pain. I would argue when you distract, when you go to your phone, instead of being able to sit in something, or if you're going through something and you say, oh, I need a cigarette, that's you fleeing an emotion. You're trying to distract and you're going to smoke a cigarette, you're going to think about other things on purpose, so you don't have to actually, you're just trying to avoid an emotion is all you're doing. And what is avoidance? That's flight. You're flying, you're fleeing. Drivenness, it's one of those weird ones, like it's awesome for somebody, right? You'd think. Well, when it's to a maladaptive degree, you're just running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to stay busy so you can avoid facing certain emotions. That's really all we're talking about here. Adrenaline junkie, right? Yep. It's that need to distract and going for more and more. You just always want more because you're not content. You need to flee the moment or the emotion that are coming up. Busyholic, same. Micromanager. I'm telling you, a lot of these are, you may not be able to see it in yourself. These are pretty like crazy accusations for me to just throw around like this. Micromanager could even be down to anytime you, in your mind, even without even having to say it, when you judge somebody else for something, you're not actually actively micromanaging them. But if you're judging them based on your life and your lessons that you've learned and your morals and your standards, that's micromanaging. You're even if you're not actually enforcing the micromanaging, you're still not okay with them as is, even though they had a different life than you. They learned different lessons. They had different people that raised them or were around them, so that taught them different things. They have their own coping strategies they're using. So you just decide my way is the right way, and it's not very enlightened, you know? Or like, it's ignorant. Well, no, I shouldn't say ignorant. It's just uninformed to want everybody to be certain ways, you know? Compelled by perfectionism, same thing applied to yourself. For me, if I wasn't perfect in certain ways, my mom too, of course, she was much more vicious than my dad, but he would get very upset, and I mention him because he's the one I actually looked up to as the good parent. My mom was very obviously abusive in different ways, but he was this religious guy. But he would, if you argued, if you ever went against anything he said, or even if you I asked him to repeat himself, you'd see this twisted rage on his face, and that caused me to need to be perfect. Because he got dysregulated, he would get upset, and I as a kid saw that, and I thought that I was the problem, so I felt like I needed to parent him and control his emotions. That's starting that pattern of control, of needing to control things out of fear. It's a coping mechanism. This is all 4F: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. These are just ways to control, all of them, instead of just being, which is obviously way easier, and most of the time is the perfect way to go if you're not busy trying to avoid certain emotions. Mood disorder, bipolar, so that can be flighty. And ADHD, of course, is flighty. Your attention flees off, you're riding the wind, you're just doing the most. So let's go for detrimental characteristics of freeze response. Dissociative. This was a big one for me. Freeze and fawn were my more emphasis, but I absolutely had bunches of fight or flight, But if I had to pick two, I would say freeze and fawn. Dissociative. I could dissociate like nobody's business, and I thought that was this big existential thing. You're not even in your body. Da, da, da. No, I just, when I'm talking, anytime you stop to think over what somebody's saying or things that are happening, stopping to narrate things in your mind, like constantly ruling this one way or another, or trying to think through all this stuff. I was fleeing also into freeze of where I wasn't in flow anymore. I wasn't in the moment. I was adding a whole thought layer onto reality instead of just being in reality. I was constantly dissociated. I had no idea. Anytime you stop in the middle of doing things and you're just staring for a second, and you're thinking about something, that's dissociating. When it's maladaptive, when you're ruminating on negative things, but just for the purpose of rumination. So here's a caveat though. Ruminating is, you'd think, oh, that's me not avoiding the emotion because I'm sitting here ruminating on it. Well, a lot of times when you're ruminating, you're resisting the emotion at the same time. So for me, I felt very outcast. I wasn't socialized well. I basically had zero parents. And when you're raising yourself, so I felt very outside of everybody. And when I actively sit there and think about it, I feel a lot of shame. I feel a lot of depression over, I'm going to just die alone. I can't really connect. And of course now I know it's because they never connected with me. So I learned to expect no connection. That's really crappy. And so when that shame like rears its ugly head, I would spiral into, so I would think about it, but I would be very resistant to it and very against the feeling. Like it felt very uncomfortable, and I'm even physically kind of bracing without realizing it. My sternum the muscle would clench. I'd kind of be forward a little bit, and I would be less relaxed. And because I was so resistant to it, I didn't honor the fact that I was supposed, like it makes sense for me to feel that way because it's based on my early life. And deeming it this negative emotion, when the idea being all emotions are manifestations of causes from earlier in your life. So I had a reason why I've had social anxiety and felt like an outcast and had all that shit. I had a reason. I was supposed to feel that way because it's based on what was done to me and not done. And I was never hung out with as a kid. I was basically neglected and abandoned, even though they were right there near me the whole time. And to the degree that I can appreciate that it wasn't my fault, that's just based on my experiences, and it was more of a testament to their shoddy parenting than an actual flaw in me. Well, I can open myself up and really actually see that emotion. Before I would look at it, but it would be in brown colored glasses. Now I can look at it through clear lens, and shame does come on. Those emotions, sadness, depression, worry about the future, but now I can keep my body relaxed as I embrace it, and I love those things when they come in. It's a total paradigm shift. Everybody thinks you have to avoid it. This is a bad one, avoid it. And the idea is that there's no bad emotion. That's the real take home here. If you're scared and there's not something physically, a real reason to be scared, or it's a little more than the situation, the actual danger in the situation, feel it. Open yourself up to it, but with kind eyes. Stop judging the fear because it's there. When you're turning away and trying to distract, you're literally just pretending something isn't there, but yet you want it to be solved. That doesn't even make sense. You have to look at something before you can solve it. There's just no way around that. I can't solve a math problem if I'm not looking at the page. Same thing with you. Same thing with your whole life. And these things, every time you distract, when you try to avoid it, as they say, what you resist persists. You're just giving it extra weight, and you're putting it off. So it's like you're winning the battle to distract and to feel okay in the moment, and you're losing the war because you're just adding to it, adding. Every time is another instance of, I couldn't handle this. That's the vibe. I couldn't handle this. Luckily, I had a distraction nearby. And then that builds up, and you may never, until the day you die, you may never ever embrace that and never be able to actually look at it. So it does take some kind of courage. It more takes an openness to do something new, which is obviously courage as well, but I don't look at it as courage. Like, as far as from my own perspective when I'm doing it, I don't look at it as like, oh, let me be brave and just fully face this. I look at it as softening up and giving up this almost this bravado instead of just genuine authenticity and confidence. So not like bravery to do something wild and exciting, crazy, or strong. Just the confidence to exist fully, which includes a wave of emotion comes. Okay, I'm just here with it. I'm not judging it. And like I said, to the degree I can honor that and honor young me as like this pure, innocent thing that was just done all that stuff to. You know, I would bet the house that if you look back on your past to the however much you remember, you could piece how you took those moments and those patterns, and it is the cause of all of your mental anguish nowadays. I would put all my money on that. People really underestimate parenting, and there are so many good parents that just wanted to do right. You know, even the parent in the example that wanted to raise you as the grown-up that they wanted you to be. That's ambitious, yeah, that's great. It comes from a good place, but they applied it too soon, and you know, maybe with too much force here or there, emotionally, not necessarily physical force, of course. These little things that they could have been totally great parents in so many ways and loved you to pieces, and they just didn't know any better because they had their own childhood and their own upbringing. That's why they call it a lot of generational trauma. A lot of these things came from their parents. And if to the degree that they can remember their childhood, and if you ask them about their childhood, you'll see a lot of the same patterns. Or if you see just the way they are, you say, oh, I got that from him, which he got from his dad, and however, yeah. Okay, contracting. This is a big downstream effect of fear, is contracting to withdrawal, not just physically with your posture, although a lot of scared people, they do. I did. I still do sometimes. I have to catch myself throughout the day and remember, oh, okay, nothing bad's happening. Relax your sternum. So it's not like they talk about enlightenment, there's this big epiphany moment, and you never have trauma again or you never have these patterns that pop up. Yeah, neurological links and pathways in your brain that lend to similar thoughts that you're used to. You go with what you know. That's another one of the psychology phrases. So yeah, you're gonna naturally feel afraid when you're in a certain situation that is the same, that's reminiscent in one way or another of back when you were a kid and you had to be afraid because your parent got upset about you not doing this or that certain way. So yeah, contracting, but this could also, not just physical, but it could also mean you just slowly and steadily contract into inauthenticity, into not being your full, open, free, loose, confident self. This is the person that you aspire to be, and you think it's somebody else, and if only you could just get there and bridge that gap. It's there, you just have to let go of the extra. So it's not like, if I get my strength up, I'll be able to cross this bridge. It's more like, if I take that big cumbersome suit off, now I can finally move around and get over this thing. So it's more of a process of whittling the bull away instead of gaining this new, let me learn this new biohack on how to self-regulate and give it, if I breathe longer outwards. Yeah, those can help, but that's a way to distract. That's not going into it. That's not facing the fear. That's not looking at the monster that you've been turning away from and running from your whole life. To the degree that you had to run, that's how strong, almost desperately, you need to turn around and face this thing, because that's how much power it had over you. And when you bust that illusion and you realize those were things in the past, if it's still happening in the present, then you can get away from certain people, or you can talk to them and figure out a way. But the idea being that you know now, and you can you're better suited for the present. Okay, hiding, camouflaging. Even aside from my social anxiety stuff, which I hated people seeing me, even standing in line, even sometimes when I'm at my daughter's school and I know there are a lot of people, I'm a tall guy, women, they might look at me and I hate it. Like, it's so dysregulating for me, and I breathe into it. I just allow it to happen. I'm not trying to calm my heart rate down. The irky kind of feeling, like I allow it to be. I don't run from it, and it's just lost so much of its steam. So now the triggers are still there, although I'm only a couple years into my own self-discover or self-healing, or maybe 3 years, but I did the homework for you guys. I did all this reading. I nerded out because I followed the trails to good authors that really cut through the excess. And a lot of them, like I said, they give you biohacks, they give you this, they give you all these tactics and things, all means of avoiding. It's crazy. What do they teach you in school? Like, oh, if you're upset, you count to 10. You're distracted. You're trying to, they don't say like, okay, look at it. It's okay. And you can say, oh, that's fear. You can label it. You can say, but be there with it and give it its due, because it's there. Pretending it's not there is just going to screw you in the long run. And also, as a side note, of course, there are times when you have to calm down if there's a real, when you're at work or something and you're in the middle of handling, like you're with a customer or something. If you're dysregulated, you're not going to say, sorry, you're a bit much. It's not. So you got to do what you have to do sometimes. So that just makes sense for the situation. I'm talking about when there's excess or these like thought patterns that just continue on through your whole life. You need to be able to face them sometimes. There's just no way around that. And however hard that hits you to hear, that's where you need to go. There's a quote that says, like, it's easy to love the perfect, but the imperfect is what needs your love the most. These parts of you that you think are so flawed, and I hate this thought pattern, I hate myself for this, and I did that wrong. Those were maladaptive strategies from a less than ideal childhood. That wasn't you doing that as much as that's your patterning doing that. So that's your parents doing that through you. So you can let that get that cumbersome suit off of you. Stop carrying around all this extra weight. You're very light and fluid. You're not this big, heavy, static, unchangeable. If only I could get over this, I could be at the top of this hill and I could be so successful. Don't gain. Lose the extra that they tried to add on to you, that they accidentally added on to you, whatever the case. Lose their patterns by finally facing them. A lot of our parents, they didn't have the resources we do and the reference things and the YouTube videos. They don't know about that. A lot of them, they never got to face that fear. And a lot of them, they're so old now, they can't even see it, even if it's put right in their face. And that's fine. That's based on their life and, maybe one. But you're here watching this because you do want to get rid of this thought pattern. And the answer isn't just getting rid of it. It's spending time with it and showing it love. Because what you resist persists. You have to love these supposedly flawed parts of yourself. There was a Sufi poet that he said, where the cracks are, that's the only place the light can get in. Which is a cool way of looking at it. So, yeah. All right. Let's get to the end of so freeze. Isolation, another version of contracting or hiding. That was me. I slowly turned into a hermit. I had friends, but I wouldn't answer their calls a lot of the time. I would only want to like text back after, yeah. I'd look at it, think of something clever over the neck, you know, or right away, but I would message back when I felt up to my performance standard that I had for myself to to parent everybody around me and control their emotions to make them like me. All added maladaptive things that didn't need to be. That was all part of the suit. So, couch potato, sitting just distracting in front of a TV, you know, that makes sense. Space case, kind of like the dissociating is a version of that. Space case, it's like ADHD. You stop and just start thinking about something else in the middle of things, in the middle of life happening. You're stuck back and you don't realize but you're in the past. You're stuck on a past thought pattern, but you're applying it to whatever triggered the thought in the present. So yeah, a space case, if you're not perfectly present all the time, aside from if you actually have to think to get through a situation, of course, you're not just going to walk around and just walk right into traffic because, you know, you're going to actually think through things. We're just talking about excessive. Hermit, same thing, isolation. Achievement phobic. When freezing, you kind of go with what you know. And you're very attached to this thought pattern because of how you've grown up and what you're used to, maybe how your parent or whatever you thought about yourself because of childhood and your parents. You might be very attached to the thought that achievement is uncomfortable and you don't belong there and you'll get found out, you know, these kind of thoughts, which all stem from this feeling you avoided from the beginning. Again, it's not through fault of your own that you avoided it. These are natural reactions to flawed parenting. So you felt like you're not valuable. You feel like you're not worthy of these achievements and things. There's a concept where however you view yourself, you can gain all the success in the world, but you'll always revert back down to where you feel you are. Like lottery winners, they splurge and they end up the same as they were a lot of the time because they have a very specific image of themselves, and anything they might really enjoy all these things and changing up and they're going to slowly get back down. There's also a thing where they say if you took, you know, the elites own like 50% of the world's wealth, like the top 1%, which is insane. But they say if you evened it out between all the billions of people on Earth, if you gave us all the same amount, they said within X number of years, it's still going to all end up in the same hands and little bits for the rest of us. Because you always go with what you know. So those guys, this is a bad example in the sense that that's not what you want to aim for, being greedy and taking from others so you can have just more than what you need. But for the purpose of this, you go with what you know, and that's freeze to a T. Schizophrenic and ADD. So ADHD was flighty version of distraction and constantly running from emotions. ADD is the freeze version of that. Okay, so here we are. We're at fawn type, detrimental characteristics of the fawn type. Codependent, of course. So when your parents got upset for different things that you didn't do perfectly and by their standards, or that they needed to feel regulated, to feel okay and safe. It's wild to think that this little toddler could trigger a parent into not feeling safe, and to where they add all this control onto this kid and erode this kid's authenticity and willingness to just be himself. But we did have the power to do that. They had very specific things that they wanted from us, or the example of my dad, he'd get pissed about dumb things, normal growing up childhood things, and he'd be very upset. And the kid takes that extra upsetness. So it's not like there's one thing to, if you do something wrong, like for him to show and teach, he should have been connecting and teaching through that instead of just discipline and no connection and neglect. What do you know? Like, I'm lucky I turned out as well as I did, because a lot of people with similar uh, childhoods, they're out there robbing, murdering, doing crazy stuff. So, like, okay, codependent. Oh, so yeah, when they get easily dysregulated by that, you learn to fawn, which is like, fawning over somebody. You learn to parent everybody around you and keep them happy, which is taking on the world. It's taking on the weight of the world to a kid and to the grown-up you have slowly turned into. So fawning is where you just merge with their ideas and their framework and what they want to keep them happy, because you had to do that as a kid. Servitude, groveling. Essentially, you're doing that even when you acquiesce to whatever their point is or go along, you merge with them, but also doing things for them. Me, I was a very helpful guy, and I just genuinely thought it was because I was being a nice guy. Turns out I was being disingenuous. I was being deceptive. Even wanting people to like you. If it causes you to change your behavior in any way whatsoever, I would argue that's maladaptive. That's you being deceptive. That's you faking. And if they love you for a fake version of you, even if it's just little moments here and there, do they really love you? You're coaxing this fake love so you can feel safe, because that's how you had to do it with your parents. No matter how nice they may have been in other regards, or loss of self, your own self authenticity, your own assertiveness, you just lose yourself. You slowly take on their views or this and that. Like, yeah, you lose your own self. If you were in a physically and emotionally safe childhood, you would have developed your own self, your own whole person, with your own things you learned and slowly you would have grown, instead of just taking from others and compiling that into a person, which is what we ended up doing accidentally. So again, don't be ashamed of that. Honor that, because that's served you well. And you can question the thought pattern to see if it's false, if it's just something from childhood that came from bad parenting. You can question the thought pattern while still honoring the emotion, because that emotion deserved to be there. Especially since you never actually looked at it, that's why it still deserves to be here. That emotion is doing you a service. It's popping up to let you know that you have some more confronting to do. You have some more moments of loving yourself, loving that part of yourself. I'm telling you, the darkest parts are the ones that need love the most. If you're ever gonna move past your hang-ups, there's just no way around that. People pleaser, same thing, of course. Doormat, you let people do whatever. Slave. Social perfectionism, again, that's striving to be a little different or more in this or that certain way to get people to like you, for this feeling of safe, so you can feel safe, that you have your circle, that you have the adoration of these and that people, trying to coerce people into liking you or thinking you're this way or that. Or I had a mask, and for me, it just felt like my nature. It felt like I was just genuinely this way, and I was always going to worry about people. I had no idea that I was conditioned into this slowly and surely from an infant, from a baby. I was not held. I was left in a crib to raise myself with no toys around and no parents' eyes to look into. That's what helps you feel whole as a person. They see you so you can see yourself. That's the idea. Don't even get me started. That's a whole other video. Let me know in the comments if you like that idea, because please tell me, and I'll make one about that. And it may not have been on purpose, but they may just have had a busy schedule. It wasn't a good time for them to have a kid because they couldn't devote that amount of time that the kid would need. Coercing people into liking you. I did it through jokes or being nice, and it wasn't until I saw all these patterns and realized that I'm totally being deceptive. I'm not being authentic at all. And I was very surprised when it slowly led to me shelling myself in different ways. Even if you're not a hermit like I ended up, I was an extreme case. That's why I went down all these rabbit holes. I needed to. There was no alternative that worked for me. I wanted all or nothing, you know? I was ready. Yeah, so even though those felt very natural to me, I just thought it was the way I was. It turns out I was this nice guy. I was very compassionate. I would do things to help others. If they tell me a problem, I'd try to solve it for them. And it was all just me trying to secure my own safety. Not to say there wasn't real altruism in there, or real like kindness, but yeah, so much of that was me just trying to doing it for myself, doing it for them so I could, yeah. And I had no idea. I hadn't consciously thought of it, at least. I just developed that way. It's how I got by. It's how I kept my parents safe. So I just learned it without thinking it out loud, you know? As so much of this is. That's why the biggest thing is to bust the illusion and to realize what's going on. That a lot of these, I hope, you know, if even one person's eyes are opened from this, then mission accomplished. That's what I'm doing this for. I know I'm not going to grow to some big, it's like a talking head video. I'm just here for those people that are desperate enough to finally go for it and face these emotions. That's all we're really talking about here. All the problems in your life, they all stem from your your pattern of avoiding specific emotions. You avoid the most or the hardest. Those are the ones I would argue you got to tackle first. Because let's be honest, we need some wins. We've thought way too much about the negative parts and negative this and negative that, and why do I keep doing this? And you don't realize till after that you got pissed about this. Dysregulated. It's all stemming from avoiding specific emotions. And it's joyful. It sounds scary, and you feel like, oh, if I open up that rabbit hole, I'm just going to be this bitter asshole all the time. That's why I've been avoiding it, because I live in the world. I have to be able to do that. Yeah, go into a room. Think of whatever it is to trigger, like induce a trigger, and relax into it and see it and give it the love that you never did. You had to avoid it. Give it and give yourself love, because your past is part of you. Those patterns, they're a part of you in the sense that they're a part of your journey. They were added on by your parents, but you've developed a worldview around them. You need to give them the appreciation and love that they deserve. Otherwise, they're going to keep haunting you and they're going to follow you around. Okay, Fawn, domestic violence victim. What is it, Munchausen syndrome, where you like identify with the captor, or Stockholm? Even though logically, as you got older, you realized it was bull. If it was happening when you were a toddler and you couldn't realize those things, your core part of you, the pattern way deeper down than your logical reasoning, the pattern deeper down, like on an emotional level, before the logical level, it's still gonna be there. That pattern's still gonna be there. It's still gonna trigger these certain things and certain emotions, and then you just turn away and try to distract. You know, it's just a whole It's just a whole circle. It's very circular. A parentified child, again, having to parent your parents, having to keep them happy and having to keep them well adjusted and on your team. For a kid who that's their source, that's their whole life. The parents determine so much for this kid. Whatever they decide goes. This kid looks up to you. That parent is like God to this kid, you know? It's the whole world. Mainly more your mom. Of course, dads have a part to play in it, but your mom is who your original source attachment is to, who they're the ones when dad may be at work or whatever, or even when they're both at home, moms are the ones that are more tender. When they do research studies, moms even, you know, they're consistently more tender. It's like part of evolution, God, however you want to phrase it. It's ingrained. Of course, I'm very tender with my daughter, but I'm manly a lot of times too, and I'm tougher than a mom would have been. A well-adjusted mom would have been, and I have to catch it, kind of. So yeah, a parentified child. This kid was forced to grow up too soon. And now they're too grown up for the moment. Everything is more serious. When you have to keep everybody liking you, you're way too serious for the moment. You feel like there's something to avoid and be ashamed of because you feel this need for perfectionism around others. You don't want to look bad. Yeah. Which ironically, like, nobody wants a perfect friend. That's not an approachable person. They want somebody who's flawed like them. That's when you connect. Or it's also said, like, when you fall in love with somebody or have any kind of affinity, like with a friend also or whatever. When you fall in love with somebody, it's you're crazy falling in love with their crazy, or like your crazy's mesh, or I don't remember the exact phrase, but it's alluding to the fact that you're flawed, they're flawed, you guys are letting it all hang out. You're not, or at least hear it that way. Now, we can go more into it. Please, anybody, like, comment. I've gotten some good comments on a few of my videos, and I really enjoy it. I'm still at the beginning, so, you know, but I'm doing it. I want to talk about this stuff. I did ACA, adult. It's almost like AA, but more of a, instead of a focus on quitting, it's more of a focus on the trauma and things around that, you know, self-healing, that kind of thing. But they have a thing where no crosstalk. You can't. So if somebody, it's more of like a venting avenue than a back and forth. And I'm kind of looking for some back and forth, and I want to help other people because some of this stuff is like, I'm telling you, I was the worst of the worst. I was so shelled up, it was ridiculous. I could hyperventilate and panic attack just being around people. Is very maladaptive, obviously. And that was all me coping. So, okay, well, thank you. It's been real. Bye.